Hey guys, it's Robert, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up an array of objects, in this case person objects. This first declaration statement right here creates a plist of size 5 of persons. So every item in the list, every element in the list will be a person object. And here we just initialize it with 1, 2, 3, 4 different person objects that we've created up here. Going to show you also how to set up the same kind of a situation but using the array class with size the same 5. And in this case, person objects also. Let's go look at the person.h and the person.cpp file very quickly just to see what we've got going here. So we've got a person default constructor here. We've got a person parameterized constructor right here with a string and int for the name and the age data members that we've got down here. We've got a get name, a get age, a set name, a set age, and a display function here. Notice with the getName function that instead of defining what this function does over here in the .cpp file, we're simply going to put it right here. And since it consists simply of just a return name, quite often with these simple functions like the get and the set functions that just consist of a line or two, quite often we'll just implement them right here in the .h in the header file rather than doing it over here in the .cpp file. Excuse me. Same thing with a set name, because we simply take this parameter variable n and assign it to the field n, or the field name rather. That's something that can very easily be done right here in the .h file also. With the setH though, we want to put some validation with the setH, so we'll use the setH, or we'll define the setH function along with the display function right here over in the .cpp file, in the header file. In the default parameter here, I've got this little output line that just indicates that a person was created. Whenever this constructor gets called, we'll see this appear, and that'll give us some insight in terms of when this default constructor actually gets called. In the parameterized constructor right here, we've got something here called an initializer list. Purpose of the initializer list is to take the data members, in this case name and age, and do some very efficient initialization right here. So we start with a colon. Name, that's the name of the field. N is the value that we want the field or the data member initialized to. And N is simply the parameter variable that takes the value that's passed to the constructor when the object is created. For the age, we're going to call the setAge function and pass it this parameter variable because we want to make sure that the age is always greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, we'll simply take the value of the parameter variable, assign it to the field of the data member. Otherwise, we'll assign that age the value 1, and we're just picking 1 because it's just kind of like a nice number. Then down here with display, we've got the name is age years old, so that will be the display function. Alright, now let's get down to business here. Over in the person test file, this is the application with the main method in it. So the very first thing we're going to do is to create a person object invoking the default constructor. Using that object to invoke the display method to see what that looks like, then using the set name, the set age functions to initialize the name with Jack and the age with 39, and then displaying those again. Then we're going to create a couple of other objects here, person P2, P3, P4, Jill, John, Jane, corresponding ages here, and after we create each one we'll display them. Then down here what we're going to do is use the size t type. Size t is an unsigned type in C++. Anytime we want to use integer type variables or values just from 0 and above, in other words positive, we can use the sign t. We'll make it a const. Uppercase letters here just indicates that this is a C++ convention for all constant variables, and we initialize it with the value 5. Then right down here in this line we'll create a variable called plist, which will be an array of person objects, dimension to hold 5 of those things. And we'll initialize this array with these values P1, P2, P3, P4, the array objects, or rather the person objects that we've created right up here. Then what we're going to do is just use a traditional for loop to display each individual item in the array. Alright, then the next thing we're going to show you is how to create actually an array. In this case it's going to be plist with this little underscore, but we'll use the array class here, and we'll excuse me, the type of object or the type of element stored in the array will be person objects again, and the number will be sized just like we've done before. And then in the array class has some functionality that's built into it. One of the functions is the at function, so we can say plist underscore dot at 0, and this will allow us to assign the P1 object that we've created above to the element at position 0. The same thing for P2, P3, P4. We'll assign these objects to the corresponding at locations or locations in the array at 1, at position 2, at position 3. Then down here what we're going to do is use this range-based for loop to invoke the display function for every element that's stored inside the array. The way this works is this represents the type of element stored in the array. In this case it's person, and person is just a variable of type person. Then we've got a colon here, and then plist underscore, this is the list of objects, this is our array. And so what happens here is this works exactly like this for loop does up here in terms of what is displayed, but instead of visiting each individual element at position I and displaying or invoking the display function, what happens down here is the first time through this loop the person variable gets assigned the element at position I at the very first position 2, and then we use that person variable to invoke the display function. The next time through the loop the element at position 1 gets assigned a person, and then that person gets displayed. I'm really having a hard time talking here. I'm trying to talk too fast, maybe that's the problem. At any rate, that's how this for loop works. So let's run the program and see what happens here. Alright, so here we go. Get it situated so we can see everything. There we go. Move this over here and that'll make it a little bit easier for us. Okay, so the very first thing that we do right here is to create this person object, and the default constructor is invoked. Consequently, we get person object, or rather person created, printed right here. Then we're going to use this person object to invoke the display function, but we haven't assigned values to the fields yet, so we get an empty string right here and just a bunch of garbage here for the age. Once we have set the name to Jack and set the name or the age to 39 and then invoke the display function, we get Jack is 39 years old, just like we would expect. Then down here we're going to create 1, 2, 3 more objects, Jill, John, and Jane, and after we create each one we'll invoke the display function using that particular object. So we've got Jill, John, and Jane with their respective years right there. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do down here is to create this array. Now this is where something very, very interesting occurs. Notice that we are initializing this array with 1, 2, 3, 4 different objects at position 0, position 1, position 2, position 3, but we've got 5 objects. So we've got another position or element in this array that doesn't get initialized with anything. Well, what happens is these actual objects are placed in positions 0, 1, 2, and 3. In position 4 is an object that's initialized with the default constructor. Consequently, we get person created right here. So this person created indicates that the default constructor was called just once, even though 4 objects were placed in the array. So P1, P2, P3, P4 were placed in position 0, 1, 2, and 3. But in position 4, the last position in the array, we had to place an object, and that object was created with the default constructor. Consequently, person created is output right here. Then notice what happens when we display this list. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we've got something down here because in position number 5, we've got this blank object just like we had up here. So we get some empty string for the name and some bogus value for the age. So that shows you how things are initialized here. This little commented out code here just indicates that instead of using this list here to initialize the array, we could have assigned values P1, P2, P3, P4 to the corresponding positions in the array. That would have worked just as well. But this is a little bit easier to do since we've got the objects created already. And then this just outputs the information right here. Now let's take a look at what happens down here when we create this array of persons using the array class. Once again, we could have initialized the array elements just like we did up here, using exactly the same syntax. Or we could have used the plist_.at function, and at position 0 assigned the value p1, at position 1 assigned the value p2, and so on, which is what we did to initialize, or not initialize, but to assign values to the specific elements in this array. Then down here, when we created the array list, or rather when we output the array list, we get the person.display. So person represents each one of these as it goes through the loop and outputs the corresponding values. Now, notice that when we created this array right here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different default constructor calls. Because what happens is that when this array is created and it's not initialized with anything, we don't actually assign values down here. What happens is each one of these array positions gets occupied by a blank or an empty person object. Consequently, the default person creator, the default person constructor was called for each one of those as they were placed in the list. And then we get the list printed out down here just like we got it printed out up here. And once again, because we've got one empty item, that's still part of the array that gets printed right here. And then we get the bogus value printed out here. At any rate, I hope that helps a little bit in understanding how to create an array of objects, how to fill up the array with objects, a couple of different examples here, and how to create an array with the array class and basically do the same kind of operation. I hope that helps. If you've got any questions about this, feel free to give me a call or send me an email message. What I would recommend that you do is watch this video several times if you need to, and set up this person class just like this with the .h and the .cpp files, and then do a person test file, something similar to this, and just kind of play with it, do a bunch of different things so you can see what works. Alright, so that's it. Take care and good luck.